right. As always, I'm Bob of TalesbyBob.
I'm the ass of the podcast, Derek.
And I'm author Ben Meeks.
This is take two of this episode because Bob fucked up. So, um, yeah,
Way to go, Bob.
no, I don't know what happened. Um, but we got through the news segment, and then I was looked over at my other screen to like scroll so I could see what was going like the next thing, and it said it wasn't recording. So just so you know, it was the single best news segment we've ever done.
It was fantastic.
it was you
Yeah.
know the comments were witty and insightful. I felt like everyone was richer for having had it. Um, so instead of going over the news, I was going to give you the headlines real quick, and you could see what you missed out on. The headlines were NYPD to roll back facial hair uniform policies. Beards and badges. Mobile PD loosens facial hair policy for trial period. Ban on book bans introduced in Minnesota legislature. So, and we also talked at length about the Yankees baseball team and how they don't allow beards and it hurts them when it comes to free agency.
And we
So,
solved all the world's problems
Yeah.
oh
in
yeah,
the span of like 15, 20 minutes.
yeah.
And yeah, that's it.
There was,
I think we would have been in the running for a Pulitzer
yeah.
if it were available.
I
And
gave,
probably a
A
peace
real
prize
shame.
too. Yeah.
yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
gave a lengthy anecdote of a time that I was deputized by the Montgomery Police Department to solve a crime. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it was really top notch stuff.
Uh,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you don't get that. You get the 2 minute recap of that instead of the 15-minute version. And you know what? We could have just, you know what? We're gonna do the news over again. But fuck that. Y'all ain't paying us. We're moving on. Y'all start paying us. We will ensure that y'all get news every episode. So this is our short read episode. If you have not um, picked up a copy of The Alchemy of Sorrow, which is the short story collection that we're reading from, you should. It's available in audiobook, ebook, and print. There's links on stuff in the show notes and what have you. You can find it, Alchemy of Sorrow. It's wherever you want to get books from. This is the second story from that anthology. So it's going to be full of spoilers because we're going to talk about it at length. So if you don't want that to be ruined, go read that story and then come back. The story is Skies on Fire by Sonya M. Black. So yeah, this is after this point, spoilers abound. So yeah. All right.
Here we go.
So, gentlemen, first impressions. Did you like this story? Derek.
I did. I liked it a lot.
Ben.
I liked it. I won't go far as to say I liked it a lot, but net positive.
Okay. All right. We're getting better. Last short
Yeah.
read, I was feeling lonely on liking the story. So, okay, yeah, I too liked this. I will say, we read that last one, and I think we all kind of agreed this is not really like the last story didn't really feel like sorrow, really, or at least not like the sorrow that we were expecting. This story was
Yeah,
much
this one
more.
does.
Yeah, this one feels like okay. This is sorrow that I can kind of more wrap my head around, and it is more of what I was expecting. So, yeah. All right, so we all kind of liked it to varying degrees.
Yep.
As usual, I probably liked it more than everyone just because I fucking love short stories. They're like my favorite medium. So, Derek, do you have a thought you'd like to share with us about this? Some impression or something?
Yeah, I'll just say, in general, that I think I enjoyed this a lot more than the past one because it just hit closer to home for me, all things considered.
Yeah.
It was not a fun read.
Oh, okay. I guess we should, because there are probably some people listening
Let's
that,
talk about the story.
yeah,
Yeah.
there are some folks that, you may be like, fuck that, I'm not going to read that story. The premise is, this woman was a Phoenix writer, wrote Phoenixi, one particular Phoenix. But where the story starts, they're basically getting a reward, like from the emperor. It's like, here, thank you for your service. You've been exceptional, because their body is wrecked for some reason. There's some sort of disease ravaging their body that causes constant pain. They can't walk without assistance. They can no longer
I got the
write.
impression that that was just from years of service and now old age over sickness.
Well, so it doesn't really explain in depth. I kind of got, because they're not that old. They,
Yeah, the impression I got was this is before she should have been forced to retire.
yeah.
Like she had taken wear and tear, but this was earlier because of this illness.
So she had been a pilot for 26 years, and the pilot that takes over was 13. So I feel like she's probably like in her, like pushing 40. So older,
Yeah,
but
I did the
not,
math there
but
too.
but not that old. But anyway, so and so they leave this ceremony. They go to where their Phoenix that they have ridden their career is, and they're bound together magically. And because they're sick, the Phoenix is sick. So they basically release the magic so that the Phoenix can be reborn and bond to a new trainee. And then they go home and cry and fall asleep, because it's just, it's like, my life is over. And they sleep for like 2 days. They get woken up by an old friend, who like is like, hey, get up. Like, where's your liquor? Get up. Um, Here's your medicine. Take your pain meds. Tell me where your liquor is. Oh, look, I just erected a shrine to you as though you were dead in the corner. Um, let's basically do a toast to the death of your old life, so you can start anew. And there's some back and forth there with this person like, fuck that, if I want to be mopey, I can be mopey. And this person like, yeah, you can. That's on you. Sure, fine. But I've been through this. This person lost their leg at some point in the past, and for like the past like 15 years had not been able to do. I don't know if they were also a Phoenix writer. That's kind of the impression I got, maybe, that they were also a Phoenix writer. Um, and so they were saying like, look, I've been through this. I took it in a really negative way and became an alcoholic that ran off my wife. Um, I don't think you're going to do that. I think you're just going to sit here and die. So why don't you not do that? And the story ends with this person being like, okay, no, you're right. I'm going to toast to my old life.
Let's mourn my past life,
Yeah.
and then I'll move
Right.
on once I'm done.
Yeah. So that's the story. It's shockingly written better than my recap.
Yeah.
I know that
Right.
recap was pretty top notch. You felt like you really just read the words, but um, yeah. So that's it. It was a pretty short story. But I feel like it was the right length. Like it didn't need, like, they said everything that needed to be said in this story. I feel like.
Yeah.
My opinion on these things is always it either needs to be approximately this long or it needs to be like 10 times longer. There's no in between for me. It's like, yes, this was a good, or you need to give me 10 times more information and let it be 10 times longer. That's where I'm at with these.
Yeah. One thing Derek, I don't know if you noticed this, because I read the story 3 times.
Oh my god. Uh-huh.
I read it the first time like a week before we were supposed to record this episode, and then I read it the day before we were supposed to record this episode, and then we ended up, you two have the
We're
immune
both sick.
you two have the immune systems of children, and so y'all were dying or something, so we didn't record. Um, and so,
So how are you sure we're recording now, Bob? Are you sure? Did you hit the record button?
wow, okay, that's fair. That's fair. Yes, we are. We are. Um, and so I read it again this morning before we recorded, and it wasn't until the third time that I read the word griffins, that they battled, like
Uh-huh.
riding
Yeah.
on the backs of. I don't know why. Maybe I did read it those first few times. I just didn't care. But the third time I read it, I noticed, oh, they used to fight people on the backs of griffins. Derek loves griffins.
Love griffins. Griffins are
So,
so
Mm.
cool.
so,
But yeah.
um,
I was waiting for the obvious Japanese joke. Were we ever going to
oh,
get to that? Or
okay. So if you're new to the podcast, or you're Ben,
Mhm.
something you may not know about Derek is he doesn't know anything about Japan.
ah,
um,
God.
at all. Like, it's bewildering gap in his knowledge. You would think that he knew things about Japan, but in fact, he does not. He knows nothing. So everything that's in any way tangentially related to Japanese is totally new to him, totally fresh, and he doesn't really know what to do with it.
And this
Um,
is definitely not a joke that has been existing for damn near 20 years now, because of how much I enjoy Japanese culture and how much I like anime and manga and the culture itself and how much I've read about it and things like that. So anytime anything even remotely tangential to that comes up, they have to look at me for a second and say, oh, well, Derek, this is so
yeah,
since you don't know anything
we
about it.
always have to
Yeah.
explain it to him. So Derek,
Gotcha.
you not being totally familiar with Japan, and this is something I actually wanted to talk about. One thing that Sarah did, Sarah, no,
Sonya.
Sonya, that Sonya did that was really good. That I thought was like, hey, if are you an author or want to be an author? Sonya did a really, really, really good job of doing world building in an easy way that made it easy for people to digest.
Yep.
So like everyone but Derek is somewhat familiar with Japanese culture. Like, if not everyone, but most people are. So there were things as you're reading this. This was not Japan. Obviously, Japan doesn't have phoenixes and griffins and what have you, magic. So it
Well,
wasn't
not anymore.
well, right. So this wasn't Japan. This was a fantasy world, but they dropped in these little hints that quickly painted a picture, so you knew, okay, if I think thoughts of Japan, it paints this picture for me. So, cherry blossoms, and the type of sword that gets used, and kind of
The names. Yeah.
naming convention, the fact that there's an emperor, things like that. They're all things that in
Mhm.
isolation don't equal Japan, but
But you
when
add them together,
add them
it builds
together,
that kind of picture.
if you're not Derek, it pretty quickly lets you know, okay, the culturally this is going to be have an Eastern feel to it, perhaps something like Japanese culture.
It's effective authorial shorthand, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I thought Sony did a really good job with that. So if you're like struggling, and like that's not to say like go out and write your story and just, I want this to be in medieval Germany ish, and you just drop in
Yeah.
a bunch of oh my god. All right, so quick aside, I at these writing conferences that I was at, um, people they could pay to have one of the presenters critique their first 10 pages. Um, and because I was kind of the odd man out, I got the critique requests from the people that were typically the ones I got were kind of the odd ones out. So most of the people that attended this event, from what I gather, it was more traditional literary fiction, or maybe like Christian fiction, that
Right.
kind of stuff. And so like anyone who was doing anything like fantasy related came to me.
Came to you. Yeah.
But also I had two, and without going too into this, because I don't want to reveal much about them, but one of them was written by someone who is very clearly passionate about history. It's so passionate that they love to share that passion. They like to show, like, oh, here are cool, here's a cool thing. And so they had written um, a chapter that very much showed this is what life on a farm was like. And it was very historically accurate. And it really painted a picture. But after like 7 pages of two kids doing chores, it's like,
Right.
where are we going with this? Like I feel like we're not moving the action forward. You're painting a picture, but we're not moving the plot forward. Like,
What's the purpose of you showing me these
yeah,
things?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was something we got to work on. I explained to them, like, hey, this is cool stuff. This is good stuff. This is not the place for this.
Right.
So that was neat. Anyway, so yeah, this is a good example of world building on the cheap, I guess, done really well, I thought.
Well, there's a concept that Brandon Sanderson teaches in his lectures about like how to make your prose do heavy lifting for you, and that's the kind of thing that he would espouse. Like he'd be like, you want to make sure that while you're telling the story, you're also peppering in minor details that can flesh out things without you really having to do anything. So that's the kind of thing that
Right.
was being done here. Is like you're just telling what's happening, but by selecting a specific word choice or by directing the gaze of the camera from like a directorial perspective in this direction instead of this direction, you're building out the world without actually having to spend time maiden butlering or anything like that to kind of like extrapolate or that's not the word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
What's,
no, yeah, no,
what's the word I'm looking for? Shoot, when you're just telling people outright information.
exposition.
Exposition. There we go. Yeah,
Exposition.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, and to avoid that, then you pepper these individual things in, and that's kind of does a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and it's kind of invisible, so you don't feel it.
Yeah, and y'all know me. I'm not typically one to just really be like, oh, that was really good prose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of a plot guy. There are a few books that I'm like, oh man, the prose on that's really good. Tigana by Guy Gabriel K. I will extol the virtues of that prose till I die. But that's not typically what I go for. But every so often, and I don't tend to highlight. I read Kindle versions of like I'm reading this on Kindle, so I very rarely
Same.
highlight stuff. But I did end up highlighting two passages. One for prose reasons. Jagged glass memories threatened to cut my soul to ribbons of nothingness while the fire consumed Hissa. And I just thought that was a really painfully beautiful line. It's
And that's one of those things that you use in a single sentence and you don't use too often so that it punctuates a moment and then it doesn't you don't oversaturate your writing with the kind of like what we were talking about with the purple prose. Like you're very
Yeah.
descriptive and prose heavy, but you do it for a moment and then you move on so that you're not overwhelming people with that kind of intensity all the time.
yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's very much the case here.
Good point.
There are a couple lines that that was the one that was the most impactful, but there were a couple like every so often, like if it was a major scene, there would be, a really punchy line like that that's just really flowery and just really
Punctuates, yeah, really
yeah.
drives the point home. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how you're supposed to use stuff like that.
Yeah. My other line that stood out to me, and this one just caused me to think a lot about my own life and what I've been going through the past
Hmm.
few months. But pain had long since destroyed my pride and dignity. And um, the reason this is relevant to me was my lady wife had
Mm.
a major surgery at the start of this year to repair a torn hip muscle. Okay. So it really knocked her out of the game. Long recovery, months, months of recovery. Like full recovery time will be at least 6 months. But for me, it was reading this and kind of comparing that to her. she was in pain, but not that kind of pain, because she definitely still had her pride. Because the number of times I had to be like, fucking sit down and let me go get that for you. Stop getting off the couch. Like, stop. Like, you need to be healing. You need to be resting. Like, do your exercises. But like, I'm here. Like, I am here right
No, but
now.
Bob, you don't do it right. You're not gonna do
Well,
it right.
it's like, let me go get a drink for you. She's like, well, I don't want to be, I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to be a burden. She has her pride. She wants to be able to get up and do these things. And so I was thinking about that. And then, like, when I read that line, it kind of caused me to think back. And it's like, yeah, no, I can see, you know, fortunately, she did not get to that point. But, um, yeah, like my dad had very painful cancer, and it got to a point where he was a very very proud man, but he got to a point where like there was no doing it for himself anymore, and I know that really just wrecked him from a pride standpoint, and so that was just kind of one of those, like, okay, that's, yeah, I had not really ever thought about it in those terms, and that, to me, that line kind of really, because that's on like the first page, is because it's the emperor, um is helping walk them back out there to their palanquin, and she has this thought of like, yeah, it chaps my ass to have to need this help, but I don't,
I have no choice.
yeah, I have no choice.
Right.
And so this was one of those things that, talking about like how the shorthand for
Hmm.
painting a picture of a world, that was when I kind of quickly realized, okay, we're dealing with a lot of, call them Japanese stereotypes, I guess, but the like one of the Derek, one of the stereotypes of like the like the emperor would be very removed, would not
Right.
be coming down off the throne to help someone like this. So that showed me, okay, I kind of see what's going on here world-wise, but clearly we are dealing with something different. But also, it really added some kind of impact there. It's like, it was really like, reading that was jarring to me, because it's like, okay, the emperor is coming down to help this soldier, essentially, like that stands out. That's very jarring to
Yeah,
me.
it could show that they, I mean, because they reference it, like they have a very serious personal relationship too. Like this is not just some random person.
Yeah,
Like this is a person that would come and have dinners with them and talk about all this stuff with them in a personal setting.
yeah,
So it's a different thing. So you could even take it as this being a even more of a traditional Japanese or Asian aesthetic and culture, and that's just how much they've known each other and
yeah,
been together. Where it's like, I like, sure, I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to.
right. So yeah,
Right.
so, oh, neat.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
I also, I weirdly build shrines to myself on occasion.
Oh God.
Well, so I have. Can we see it? Yeah, I'm going to stand up and, admire my shorts, everyone.
I like how he admitted that it's not like he has one shrine to himself
Right.
because
Multiples.
I didn't want to have to blow him up like that, but yeah.
So, okay, for those who are listening and not seeing the visual, I have this. I think I got it from World Market. It was this neat little, like, wooden little, like, I guess you would typically fill it with like potpourri or something like that. Um, but little, like, platey type thing, wooden bamboo platey thing, and I've put things in there. Now, right now, it actually has like kind of a jumble of things just from it getting moved around a bunch. But like right at the center, I got given to me a crystal from a Cherokee shaman. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, neat. Guy was Cherokee shaman, and psychologist. So neat. So he gave me that, and I put a watch around it, and I put like a typo negative ticket stub in there and stuff like that. But like the idea, and I put a light bulb in there, and the idea was like
Put a good band's ticket stub in there or anything?
it's fair,
No.
it's fair. But like so the idea was like you know the crystal was kind of the center. Like I'm not a crystal woo woo guy, but this was like Jesus Christ, a Cherokee shaman gives you a crystal, you do something with it, you know.
Right.
So I put it in the middle, and then it's like the idea would be like, oh, so you know, the idea is kind of like manifesting me some good juju, and so like that I would always be able to go find cool concerts to go to, and the light bulb was so I'd have good ideas to write, and the
Hmm.
watch in there was so that I you know have the time to get things done, that kind of stuff. So having a shrine to celebrate the death of your old life resonated with me.
Yeah.
Um, and
That
it,
was one of my favorite things in the book, for sure.
mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I almost don't even know what to say about it other than it was just a really powerful kind of, like closing a chapter in your life and actually making a shrine, like a funeral mourning kind of shrine. It was nuts. I hadn't thought about it, but when I read it, it's like,
That makes a lot of
that's
sense.
actually kind of a good idea,
Yeah, it really is.
uh, to, God, this is just going to be the Bob anecdote hour apparently. I really, really, really. So I went my 20s kind of a little wild. Especially like my later 20s got kind of wild. Nothing like illegal, just you know partying all the time, going to punk shows, yada yada yada. Um, and definitely like it was kind of a recurring theme among my friends of like, Jesus Christ, Bob, you're kind of like not living up to your potential. Um, like working dead end jobs, like no good jobs, like all terrible jobs, yada yada yada. Well, so I kind of reached a point where I started to kind of like shed all that and kind of was like, oh, I'm you know building a new life and um, you know I'm growing up. And one thing I always really wanted to do is I really wanted to do a suspension, which is the kind of thing where you put the hooks in your back and they raise you up into the air. I've always really wanted to do that. Um, and my goal was when I reached my goal weight, which was 200 pounds. When I reached 200 pounds, I was going to send out invitations to everyone that I cared about, that like invite them to the death and rebirth of Bob Magoo. And I was going to do the suspension with the idea being I go up in the air, the old Bob. When I come down, I am like Jesus reborn, um,
born again.
born
Yeah.
again. So
Oof. Oof.
um, it will come as no surprise that when I was in grad school, there was a small cult devoted to me. uh, I I sometimes have some you know Messiah like tendencies. So
So some people might see that I'm often kind of brutal to Bob, but that's because I just want to pat him back down because he he get he had a freaking cult. Okay, he needs somebody to be like, Bob, let's stay grounded. Let's stay here.
yeah, yeah. So instead of reaching my goal weight, I basically consumed a second person and added it onto myself. So never did that, but it was something that I really wanted to do for a long time. Um, and so the symbolism there, like in the story, resonated for that. And so um, I don't know, everyone like just go out and build a shrine to the old you that you've moved beyond.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
I think that could be really powerful thing, like to do and like close a chapter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah, it was
I
great.
I think it's really smart because so I've going into some of this. So I've been to therapy on some of these things, and one of the big things that they taught me in that was very helpful was like journaling, was basically writing down your thought processes. So it's a, behavioral therapy stuff. So it's like cognitive behavioral therapy. When you're thinking about things in a negative way, you don't realize it because the words aren't being transposed in front of you. So if you write them down, you can catch yourself in those traps that make your thought processes negative. So this is kind of a similar thing where it's like I can now visualize the person that I was before that is no longer going to be here. And I have to remember that I am not that person anymore. Like I have to be okay with that. I have to be able to look at that as a representation of those are the things I'm not going to do anymore. I'm going to become something else. So I appreciated that.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, like I said originally, like this one hit me pretty hard because like pretty much all I do at this point is I work. That's what I do. I go to work. I work. I come home. I sleep. I get up and go back to work. I don't have, a lot. I don't do a lot. So the fact that I've always been thinking about the fact that like, okay, that's all well and good. If I'm going to dedicate a lot of this to my job, then I want to do a really good job. But what happens when I don't have that job anymore?
Yeah.
This is what happens. So yeah, that was something that hit me pretty hard. It was like, yeah, if that's the choice I want to make with my life, that's fair. However, this is what I'm going towards. Like this is what's going to happen at some point.
So are you thinking that you're going to retire to become a Phoenix writer? Is that?
No, I think I'll just probably work until my blood pressure gets so high that I just spontaneously combust, and then that'll be it.
So you become the Phoenix. I gotcha.
Correct. Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're more of a Griffin guy anyway. So
I am 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's something I'm hoping we have more stories that are like this that kind of trigger deeper thoughts. Like when we picked this, I didn't think like, oh, we're gonna have lots of deep thoughts from this. I was just like, oh, this sounds cool. It sounds different, But right. if it engenders a lot of deeper conversations, that's neat.
Well, I have a question. Like Ben, you said you thought it was good, but it wasn't your favorite. What were some of the negatives that you had that you kind of felt about it? Was it just not to your speed, or there wasn't enough meat?
Yeah. No, I didn't really have anything negative. You know what I mean? But really, it didn't engage me to the point where, just to get to the point of that, I thought it was a great story. It was fine. It just, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I really like I like when she mentioned the Griffin. I like her world building. I like the funeral, the memorial that they did. There's a lot I liked about it, but I don't know.
There's not a lot of action.
Something.
So if you're like
I'm very action oriented kind of guy, so I don't know. Maybe that's what it was.
I mean, I like the story too. My whole thing is like I liked it. I don't want to say like, oh, it was amazing, or no, it was good. But it also it was a good story that, because of who I am and where I am right now, had a specific type of impact that made me feel a certain kind of way. So it's worth pointing that out. But from the standpoint of just the story itself, fairly well done. I'll almost always say that I would like a little bit more description. Like that's just kind of a thing that I always want a little bit more of. But it was nice and concise. I don't like I said, I have when it's a short story, I want it to be short. If it's not going to be a short story, then I want you to give me a lot more, and I need it to be a lot longer. So there's been a couple of short stories we've read in the past where it's kind of, it really feels like it's dragging on. I feel like I'm really having to slog through the read, and it's not that I'm not enjoying it, but it's also that it's giving me it's being written in such a way where it's anticipating being a shorter fiction, which means it's excluding some of the things that I enjoy the most in writing, but then it's being longer than I want it to be if it's going to be written that way. So then I'm like, so then it just kind of feels like it drags on. Well, this didn't do that. This was the appropriate length for the type of writing that I was getting. So I was happy with that. But all in all, it was a solid read. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. This is one of those. I did a little bit of research, but didn't make notes. So I had to just go look real quick and confirm what I was thinking. near as I can tell, this is it. This, the last one was a short story from the world of the author's novels.
Hmm.
This one, I think, is just a standalone story. Sonya M. Black does have novels out there, but they are not fantasy for the most part.
Hmm.
One's a flintlock fantasy, um, and the other two are like they're called twisted fairy tales, but they're like private detective meets um, fairy tales. So like the first one's called the Snow White Files. This next one is called the Riding Hood Files, stuff like that. So it's that kind of crime noir
Hmm.
detective kind of meets fairy tales. So
Well,
so yeah,
in that case, I think she did even better job world building.
yeah,
You
yeah,
It's
know,
not
because
really what she does.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, this read like it was part of some much bigger series or a little snippet of whatever, and
hmm
so hey,
yeah.
great.
It did kind of read like, oh, the kind of thing that an author might be like to write, like, oh, hey, this minor character,
Here's
maybe
why they are the way they are.
yeah,
Right,
maybe the novel they wrote is about the youth, the 13-year-old
That.
who
Hmm.
binds with Hissa, and now you see, oh well, here who had Hissa before, and kind of how that went.
right.
So, um, if just a little bit like a book about a Phoenix writer, I don't know, that appeals to me. Fighting Griffins, um,
Yeah, that's
I would
kind
We,
of where. Well,
I would check that out.
you see a lot of dragon riders, probably the most common rider thing. So yeah, I really like the phoenix and the mention of a griffin rider. That was
Yeah.
cool.
yeah,
What is it? Was it
I was
Mercedes Lackey who had the
the
Griffin Rider?
Black Griffin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't really a Griffin rider. The Griffins were magical creatures that could do their own. I love those books because there was a lot of like aerial combat with magic and stuff like that. So it's like magical creature dogfight stories with
That's cool.
throwing spells, and I'm like, oh, this is, which is why the story that you mentioned with oh shoot, I forget the one that you're working on.
Scale rider.
Scale Rider.
Yeah, that's why I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. I want this because I love that kind of stuff.
Gonna be good.
Yeah.
I'm on
Yeah,
chapter 2. Yeah.
nice.
Um. All right. Yeah. Anything you want to add before we put a bow on this? No. No.
I think
I
I've
don't think
said what
so.
I've got to say. Yeah,
I think we spent longer talking about it than it would take to read. So
Yeah.
essentially, yeah.
yeah, which cool. All right. Well, I don't know what the next story is. I'm a consummate professional, so I didn't didn't write that down. Let me see what the just because I know we said that there was possibly just making sure that they all um link up. Oh God.
Yeah, I had it pulled up, but I went back because I was trying to find a name. But
Yeah.
it looks like the next one is A Matter of Trust by Angela Board.
Okay, there you go. So that's the next one to read. Matter Trust, Angel Board. If you have not picked up a copy of this yet, just search Alchemy of Sorrow. It'll pop up all the ways you can buy it, but there'll be a link in the show notes. That I'm pretty sure will only work for US based customers because I'm just going to link to Amazon. And I know we have a listener in New Zealand, and he's probably going to click the link and be like, "You son of a bitch, Bob." So um, it is what it is. Sorry, superfan Ryan. Uh,
Funny.
so, but yeah, Alchemy of Sorrow, story 3. But the next episode will be a book battle. So that's how it's going to be. One a month. You get one short read and one book battle a month. So, but all right. In the coming week, as you consider when you're going to transition from person to Phoenix, I hope that you find a good time, a good place. Maybe construct a shrine first to the old, peasant-like human you, to celebrate the new Phoenix you, and may the blessing of the beard be upon you.